Hi. So none of us ever have conflict, eh? We're all free of conflict every moment of our lives. That's the biggest lie I could have ever told you. Everyone has had conflict in the past. Everyone is aware that they might have conflict in the future. And a big chunk of us have got conflict somewhere in our lives at the moment. Conflict is part of our lives. And yet some people tend to be in more conflict than others. Some people are constantly in conflict because they have this wild horse that tells them if we don't tackle this, immediately it's going to become worse and worse and worse. So they get into conflict that they should never be part of. Other people are so fearful of conflict that and that fear is based on the thought that I cannot handle conflict. As soon as I have conflict, my whole life is going to fall apart. And because of that, they don't have the conflict that they should have. Because there is a conflict where we should have a conflict to set our boundaries, to be able to have a healthy relationship, etc., etc. Now, because their wild horse tells them, if I have this conflict, everything is going to fall apart, they never have the conflict. So they suppress it. And because they suppress it, it never gets addressed. And it's in the dark where it's got so much power. It impacts the way they react, it impacts the way they kind of engage, and it impacts the way they allow things to happen with them. Until the day that all bad things break out. They just explode, and they're like this atom bomb. They just destroy everything around them. And everyone is actually fearful of that, whether you realize it or not. If you're that person that just avoids conflict the whole time, everyone knows you're going to explode at some stage. And they are fearful of it. Their wild horses tell them that it's going to be ugly. So, like with all emotions, like with all challenging situations, it's better to manage it than to control it. If you control it, you suppress it and you give it space to kind of fester and grow. If you manage it, you let it come out while you can still manage it, while it's still a small thing. I compare it to a cat. As I talk to people on the emotional debt workshops, or in my book that I wrote, I talk about this cat and compare feelings and situations to a cat. So a beginning emotion or a beginning conflict is like a small kitten. Yeah, you can take it out of a box. It's even cute. It's funny at times. It's not really a danger to you. It can still hurt you. A little kitten can bite, it can scratch, but it's not really life-threatening. But what we do is we allow that kitten to grow in that dark area. And then at some stage we are forced to deal with it. But now it's not a kitten anymore. Now it's a lion. And that lion is able to kill you. It's able to really, really do massive damage. And that is what happens when we control something. We suppress it. We don't allow it on the light. We allow it to grow to such an extent that we come to the point where we can't manage it anymore. It is out of control. Ironically, something we try to control because of our wild horse actually ends up being so powerful that we don't have any control over it. Now, how can we take this to the next level? We need to realize that even those people that are good at conflict don't really enjoy conflict. When they do enjoy conflict, there's some serious challenges over there. All right. So conflict can only be enjoyed when we address it straight away, when we manage it while it's a kitten, while it's cute, while it's easy to manage. But a conflict that has grown to a lion, nobody really enjoys to handle. It is dangerous. It's something that creates fear. It creates uncertainties, and there's a whole herd of wild horses that impact everyone in that conflict. So how do we manage that? We realize that there are wild horses in the other person as well, as they are within us. I think it's always good to let everyone get their wild horse out. What are you fearful of? What are you fearful of is going to happen in this conflict when we address it? So that's on the table, and we can address those wild horses before we even start talking about the real challenge here. Because that is at the core of the challenge normally. And together we can work against that situation. This is awesome because we can now unite together against a common enemy. We can become comrades to some extent in that conflict, working together against what we are both fearful might happen. We could devise a plan to solve this thing in a way that what we're fearful of will not happen. And then we can agree on a way forward and resolve our conflict. I have recently heard of a facilitator that was so fearful of the conflict that might come that he just kept all the parties separate from each other. And thereby the conflict was never addressed, never solved. This is tragic. This is something that is has the power to pop up in the next area where these people are involved, and eventually will restrict their own growth. A true tragedy. How can we take it to the next level? We take this conflict and we manage it with other people, knowing that they have wild horses, we have wild horses, and we can go forward and manage the wild horses. I hope you have fun in being the conflict victor, and please, let's get that kitten out before it becomes a lion.